Good morning and welcome to KidNuz. I'm Tori. Today is Thursday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 2022. And we begin with a fifth grader's pandemic project making his neighborhood a better place. Arjun Argawal, who lives in Palo Alto, California, loves to read. He also loves to build and make art. So when COVID left him with a little time on his hands, he combined his three hobbies and built a freestanding library box outside of his home. And before he knew it, neighbors filled it with books for others to borrow. But Arjun didn't stop there. He also made a deposit of his own, a book called Where is the Little Dinosaur that he wrote, illustrated, and published. Since Arjun believes every kid in the world should have access to the gift of reading, he's giving away his book for free on his website. You can find a link on our resource page at kidnuz.org. It was a mind-blowing mid-air catch over the skies of New Zealand. This week, a small private space company deployed a helicopter to intercept one of its rockets as it fell back to Earth. Rocket Lab is testing out ways to reuse boosters to make space deliveries less expensive. The event was live-streamed and showed the booster floating down with a parachute before it gets snagged by a long cable attached to the copter. And while company execs were thrilled with the accomplishment, the experiment wasn't a total win. The pilots didn't like the way the rocket was positioned on the cable, so they dropped it safely into the ocean and picked it up later. So far, SpaceX is the only company to successfully reuse its rockets. His real-life story reads like fiction. When he was 10 years old and dressed in his Cub Scout uniform, Japanese-American Norman Mineta was taken to an internment camp with his family during World War II. Years later, Norman grew up to become mayor of a major American city and served 2 decades in Congress before breaking barriers as the first Asian-American cabinet member. This week, Mr. Mineta passed away peacefully at the age of 90. George W. Bush, who had presented him with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, praised his former transportation secretary for giving his country a lifetime of service and providing an example of leadership, devotion to duty, and personal character. In other KidNuz notes, Ed Sheeran's pop single Two Step is getting a second life. The British singer-songwriter has teamed up with the Ukrainian rock group Antitila to release a remix of the 2021 tune, with proceeds going to humanitarian relief. Members of the group, who are currently serving in their country's army, connected with Mr. Sheeran over social media earlier this year with the shared goal of raising money. The new video, which already has more than 2 million YouTube views, was filmed in Ukraine and features a new verse in the band's native language. For the first time ever, 2 NFL teams will tackle Germany. The matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Seattle Seahawks is set for November 13th in Munich. While Germany is a first, the league has a history of taking its game abroad. In fact, if quarterback Tom Brady takes the field for the Bucs, it will be his 4th international start. Brady has already won 2 games in London and 1 in Mexico City. A new study in the journal Pediatrics shows kids who eat a vegetarian diet get just as much nutrition as their meat-eating friends. However, it did find that vegetarians are more likely to be underweight, which can pose its own health concerns. The bottom line for a healthy diet, according to the researchers at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, is to include lots of fruits, vegetables, fiber, and whole grains on your plate while reducing saturated fat. That's it for KidNuz. Today's KidNuz quiz is generously sponsored by the entire class of Miss Nema at Indian Landing Elementary in Penfield, New York. Ms. Nema, your students would like to thank you for being the best third-grade teacher ever, and they wish you a happy Teachers Appreciation Week. Now, today's KidNuz quiz. What caught a booster rocket on its way back to Earth? A helicopter. What cabinet post did Norman Mineta hold? Transportation secretary. Kids who eat a vegetarian diet are more likely to be what? Underweight. What 2 NFL teams will play in Germany? the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Seattle Seahawks. In today's Teacher Appreciation Week KidNuz Kicker, we feature a library teacher in Durham, North Carolina who went above and beyond. Late last year, Turquoise Lejeune Parker fundraised over $100,000 to feed her students, just so none would go hungry over winter break when the public schools stopped serving lunches. She coined the project, Mrs. Parker's Professor's Foodraiser, and told CNN that food's a basic human right, and when we take care of our schools, we're taking care of our community. About 60 volunteers helped fill 5,200 brown grocery bags for families across the school district. Mrs. Parker started this project in 2015. It's gotten bigger every year, and now she receives lunch donations for her district from people all over the country. Before we go, another big KidNuz shout-out for Miss Nema at Indian Landing in Penfield, New York, and to our other terrific teachers and their students. Mrs. Bachtel Matthews at Copper Beach Elementary in Glenside, Pennsylvania. To California for Ms. Guzman's fantastic students at Foothill Elementary in Pittsburgh, and Mrs. Clinkscale's Wildcats at Mountain Vista Elementary in Fillmore. And to Ohio for Mrs. Deckelman at St. Christopher School in Rocky River, and Mrs. Perry at Marietta City Schools in Marietta. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We hope you tune in for more KidNuz tomorrow morning.